The Brotherhood of Steel is one of the few organizations founded after the Great War that has been able to withstand the test of time and trials of the wasteland. Technological superiority, a firmly developed code of ethics, and a distributed collection of chapters that are capable of operating semi-autonomously are just a few of the things that sets the Brotherhood of Steel apart from other post-war organizations. As the only organization that has made an appearance in every single Fallout game to date, there is a lot of historical context, lore, and dare I say it, gamer expectations when it comes to the Brotherhood of Steel. When it comes down to the Brotherhood of Steel that we see in Fallout 4, they do seem to be a bit closer to the historically accepted viewpoint that many people were expecting, especially when considering the very different portrayal we got in Fallout 3. But in many cases, it seems like the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4 overcorrected and once again stray a bit too far from the mold. And of course, this is Fallout 4, so some of this could also just be chalked up to sloppy writing or deadlines simply forcing Bethesda to release the game before they were completely finished with the faction. And let's face it, all of the major factions could have done with a little extra time on the drafting board. So since we'd rather have a bit of fun with the Fallout 4 story instead of simply complaining how bad the writing is, we figured it would be good fun to come up with 5 ideas for how to fix each of the major factions we can encounter in Fallout 4. We've already tackled the Minutemen and the Railroad in previous videos, just in case you thought we were just picking on the Brotherhood of Steel here. So if building a better Brotherhood sounds better than the smell of ozone in the morning, then pull up a cot and change your socks, because I'm Gray, you're watching Gray Gaming, and today we are listing 5 easy things Bethesda really should have done to fix the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4. Let's get this one out of the way early. It's probably the single greatest criticism I have toward the Brotherhood of Steel, and it very well could have been the straw that broke the camel's back and caused me to stop doing Brotherhood playthroughs. That's right, I'm an apostate, what of it? Anyway, as a new knight in the Brotherhood of Steel under R.D. Maxson's orders, the sole survivor is expected to introduce himself to the various department heads on the Prydwen. This is actually a pretty common practice among military organizations. When you transfer to a new command, you usually have a check-in sheet and you have to make the rounds to make sure everyone has the right paperwork in order, personnel, medical, dental, housing, etc. But when the sole survivor reaches Proctor Tegan, the Prydwen's quartermaster, who makes it very clear he really doesn't want to be the ship's quartermaster, he offers you a job that doesn't quite sound like it's above board. He wants you to negotiate with the local farmers and secure a steady supply of food, as the Prydwen supplies won't last indefinitely. After all, an army can only go so far on 210-year-old cram and mole rat on a stick. But the part that really grinds my gears is the manner in which Tegan expects you to procure the food supply. First of all, he makes it pretty clear that he's running this operation off the books, which is going to be brought back up in a later entry on this list, don't you worry. But because he's doing this of his own accord, there's really nothing that can be offered to the farmers in return. So if you go through with helping him, you end up being an enforcer for what can only be described as a protection racket, bullying settlers into giving up large portions of their harvest, whether they can safely do so without risking starvation or not. The best the sole survivor can do is promise BOS protection, but that protection in effect is just the possibility that a vertibird may crash nearby if the settlement is ever attacked. Hey guys, it's Gray here. So as I was running around collecting the different footage I needed for this segment, I realized there actually is an option to pay the farmers for their food. However, I do just want to point out that this is payment that is being provided by the sole survivor, not from Proctor Tegan. Tegan never actually reimburses you for the price, and he never actually gives you any sort of allowance or authorization to pay the farmers. So even though by technicality, the farmers can be left in a decent situation if the sole survivor has the funds to allow it, it's not actually a feature of the Brotherhood of Steel storyline. Now, it's a simple fact of military operations, especially operations which occur without the aid of a steady logistics train, that when the army gets hungry, it's going to fall on the civilian population to feed them. It's not pretty, and it should never happen, but it does. However, when fighting a hearts and minds campaign, which is the only real way to conquer new territory and hold it long term, you really can't be eating all of the locals' food and offering nothing in return. You also risk civil uprisings, which now splits your attention and resources between your actual goals goal and having to put down the insurrections, which further just increases discontent among the civilian population for your own troops. So it would have made a lot more sense to offer something, anything to the farmers in exchange for the literal fruits of their labors. Maybe reduce the amount of food requested in exchange for the family agreeing to board a squad of BOS troops. The troops offer protection, and the farm now serves as a temporary base camp for patrols. At the very least, Tegan can offer fair payment for the food they are requesting. By fair, I mean the same amount they could get selling it in the markets at Diamond City or Bunker Hill, maybe minus a transportation fee, which if the farmer doesn't have to risk the roads of the Commonwealth walking alongside a lumbering pack Brahmin, it might just be worth it for the farmer to agree to a lower price. Maybe in an act of mutual cooperation, you could work with Senior Scribe Nariah to work out a seed harvesting program that would allow you to give the seeds back to the farmers so that they at least don't have to worry about planting next year's crops. I know that's a bit of a head in the cloud suggestion, but crop development is something that the BOS works on in the Pridwin Science Lab, so it's not like it's a completely outlandish idea. And harvesting seeds from fruit is so easy a squire could do it. All of this could have gone a long way toward maintaining the image of the Brotherhood of Steel being a force for good fighting to protect the population instead of a bunch of jackbooted thugs treading over anything in their path. The Brotherhood has a long tradition of having children in their ranks. After all, until recently, the BOS was a dynastic order that you had to be born into, with the induction of outsiders into the order being a reward for exceptional service rather than standard practice. However, one thing that the Brotherhood has never been is careless with their children's lives. Child soldiers are really only an effective tactic if you're sending them to fight their own parents who would be reticent to fight back. They're difficult to control, don't have fully developed reasoning skills yet, and aren't even biologically mature yet, so they're lacking the strength and stamina of an adult fighter. These major limitations in their combat utility makes their presence in combat a liability, and should a child be killed in a combat operation, their parents aren't going to be particularly thrilled with the leadership that required them to be a part of a live combat operation. We see in Fallout New Vegas that even teenagers aren't permitted to go into the field, with their training being classroom and simulation only, though that could be partially explained away as Elder McNamara's overly cautious response to their tenuous situation. But why is this just standard operating procedure for Lancer Captain Kells to send squires into live fire combat ops? Worse still, combat operations being undertaken by a single knight or paladin. It's irresponsible, risky, and if any harm comes to the child, their parents are going to be not just devastated, but also extremely angry with Kells, negatively impacting morale and possibly causing enough unrest to spark mutinies. It's foolish, short-sighted, and there are better ways to indoctrinate the next generation of zealots that don't risk losing them before they even have a chance to join the ranks in earnest. Also to that point, Lancer Captain Kells is a Lancer, the BOS equivalent of the Air Force. It's very definitively shown that the Brotherhood has a firm chain of command, and there are serious consequences for violating the chain of command. Don't believe me? Ask Elder McNamara what happens when you break the chain that binds. In the BOS hierarchy, paladins are responsible for all ground operations. Kells is in charge of the Pridwin, its air wing, and its crew. He even says as much during his introduction. So how is it that the paladins aboard the Pridwin are okay with him possibly sending their children to their deaths when he shouldn't even have the authority to order missions that are going on the ground in the first place? It's bad writing with no basis in the established lore and is just another unnecessary string of Radiant quests for the sake of making sure that any player can never claim that they've 100%ed the game. Get rid of it. We laid the groundwork for this in points 1 and 2, but Arthur Maxson is not blameless when it comes to the extortion of farmers and the endangerment of children in his charge. As the elder of his chapter, the buck stops with him. He's supreme commander of all operations on the East Coast. Now, military generals do not need to know the minutiae of every aspect of delivering a military force from point A to point B and defeating the enemy. He or she doesn't need to know when the last time a junior lancer was sent out to fetch the mail buoy, or whether the quartermasters have properly filled out their ID-10 Tango forms, or whether Private Jody apologized to his buddy on deployment yet. Let me know in the comments if you actually get any of these references. But what a military commander in charge of an active campaign does need to know is how their troops are being fed, where the fuel for their vehicles is coming from, where all the ammo is stockpiled, and where their troops are located. These resources have to be coming from somewhere, need to be stored when they're not in use, and the commander needs to know how long they're going to last and how their army plans to replenish replenish those resources. People often defend Arthur Maxson by saying he has no knowledge of Tegan's extortion racket, but why has Maxson never asked Tegan where the hell all of these fresh veggies are coming from? Why is he not going over mission reports from Captain Kells and asking why Kells is issuing orders to ground troops and why squires are being sent as observers? Maxson was a squire himself. He was raised by the Brotherhood of Steel, and when he was a young teenager, he was nearly killed by a Deathclaw. He knows what happens when you send children into combat environments where they are not yet ready for what they are about to encounter. Now, in his defense, Maxson is a new leader. He's been elder since he was a teenager, which is a ton of responsibility for someone whose underdeveloped brain is still primarily focused on getting laid. He's still only in his early 20s by 2287, so it makes sense that he would have delegated a large amount of his duties to others as he grows into his station, but he needs to grow. He needs to be asking these hard questions. Where is the food coming from? How are my troops being trained? Who is leading them? He needs to take responsibility for those under his command, but going hand in hand with that, Maxson needs to learn that the troops under his command have opinions and experiences that are probably more valid than his own, especially, say, the first BOS member in the last 150 years or so that has actually served in a real military and had real military training. Prior to becoming elder, Maxson was known for accomplishing 3 feats: surviving an encounter with a Deathclaw, killing 2 raiders, and killing 1 super mutant. That's it. Yes, Maxson has accomplished more than he had any right to, taking full advantage of the leftover Enclave technology at Adams Air Force Base to have the Prydwen constructed and reuniting the Brotherhood of Steel with the Outcasts. But he has little effective knowledge of how to lead a paramilitary organization on military campaign, far from his cloistered existence in the Citadel. He needs to learn that just because he is in charge, that his opinion is not the only one that matters. He also needs to learn that not every order is to be obeyed without question. The Codex, the BOS's single defining code of conduct that guides their every step, was written by Arthur's great-great-grandpappy Roger Maxson, the founder of the BOS. As a member of the US military, Roger mutinied mere hours before the Great War after he discovered that the base his unit was ordered to protect was performing grisly human experiments on unwilling subjects. As a result, you can bet that when he was writing the Codex, Roger would have been heavily influenced by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, basically the set of laws that apply specifically to active duty military members. The UCMJ has provisions in it for what constitutes a lawful order and what is unlawful. Just because it's an order doesn't make it a lawful order, and service members have the right to refuse unlawful orders. As a mutineer, you can bet that Roger Maxson would have put safeguards in place to make sure that BOS members had the same protections in the face of orders to commit reprehensible acts. But Arthur Maxson does not seem to understand this. Instead, he goes off on a number of tirades at the slightest provocation.
Your duty is to follow my orders to the letter, Knight. I'm extremely disappointed in you, Knight. This is not up for judgment or debate. I'm giving you a direct order, Knight. Perhaps you should begin acting like a soldier. You will do it. And I expect you to follow it without question. I'm ordering you. Absolutely not. My decision is final. How dare you? This isn't a request that requires an answer, Knight. This is a direct order, and I don't appreciate being betrayed by my own soldiers.
Sometimes a disobedient subordinate is just being disobedient. There's always that one arrogant Brahmin plop that thinks that they know better than you do. But sometimes a junior officer who is questioning your orders has a valid reason for doing so, and it's the mark of a good leader to hear them out and request alternatives. In my Which Faction is the Best for the Commonwealth video, I laid into George Washington as an inexperienced military officer who had no business leading troops on the battlefield, both of which are true. He never served in an actual military before the American Revolution, and he was defeated far more times in battle than he was victorious. But Washington was without a doubt the best leader that could have possibly been chosen as the commander-in-chief for the Continental Army. Just one of many reasons is the fact that he often deferred to others who had conflicting viewpoints and allowed them to present alternatives. That's what separates the good leaders from the bad. A simple change that would have probably left me a rabid BOS zealot to this day would be for Maxson's character to be exactly as it's presented when the BOS arrives in the Commonwealth. But as the sole survivor slowly gains his trust by bringing Paladin Brandis back into the fold, by bringing Tegan and Kells' misconduct to his attention, by taking Fort Strong for the Brotherhood, that Maxson would slowly warm to hearing the advice of the sole survivor. As they form a sort of working friendship, Maxson can learn that Nate was a soldier or Nora was a lawyer. Both professions would offer useful experience in a paramilitary organization. Maxson could become more willing to hear out the sole survivor on situations such as, a synth being discovered within their ranks, working with other factions, or at the very least forming agreements that let them stay out of each other's way. It was such a missed opportunity, and his complete lack of personal growth is just a disappointment that has me hoping he takes an arrow somewhere much higher than the knee. If you're enjoying the video so far, it would mean a lot if you could just drop an ever so mild mini nuke on the like button. Viewer engagement is a metric we use to determine the sort of content that provides the most value to you, a random person on the internet who has the power to determine if I can afford to repair that sticky actuator on my power armor this month. Please, thank you, and now on with our list. There are really only 4 people in the Brotherhood of Steel that are easy to get emotionally invested in, unless you count disappointment with Arthur Maxson as emotional investment. These are Paladin Dance, Scribe Halen, Paladin Brandis, and Proctor Ingram. Now, Dance gets quite a bit of screen time, whether you choose to go with a BOS playthrough or not, and we get a lot of deep and meaningful conversation with him, so I'm not upset on that front. But Halen really only serves as an exposition machine or a source for our favoritist waste of time in the whole damn wasteland, Radiant quests. This is kind of a shame because she is the reason we even meet the Brotherhood of Steel, as it's her distress signal that leads us to Cambridge. It would have been nice just to spend a little more time getting to know her for who she is rather than who she is to Paladin Dance. Maybe as a field scribe it could have been Halen who brings the discrepancies in food manifest to our attention instead of Lancer Captain Kells. She could accompany the sole survivor through the duty and dishonor quest, offering an account of her own experiences with ferals, even trying to reason with Initiate Clark. This I think would have been a pretty solid improvement toward her not being a set and forget character that only pops in when Dance's story arc demands. Paladin Brandis is even less utilized. We've done an entire video about his time leading Recon Squad Artemis, so I won't spend too much time on it, but the long and short of it is Brandis and 7 others were sent to the Commonwealth, were instantly set upon by raiders, and after a series of defeats, Brandis locked himself in a bunker where he can be found 3 years later by the sole survivor. If we are successful in convincing him to rejoin the Brotherhood, he can be found standing around on the Pridwin's mess deck, and he never moves again. Okay, he does join in for the assault on the railroad and the Institute, but he's easily overlooked as we have much more important things to focus on than all the randos running around in power armor. When we find him, it's clear he's unsure of himself after losing his entire team, and after arriving at the Pridwin, he comments about his uneasiness around all of the new green recruits he's expected to trust his life to. It would have been nice to have a quest where Brandis slowly regains his confidence while drawing on the lessons learned from losing his team and living in isolation to become a better soldier and leader. Hell, we got that exact quest for a flipping radio DJ. Why not for a tragic figure like Paladin Brandis? Ingram, on the other hand, is probably the most heartwarming and heartbreaking member of the entire Brotherhood of Steel. Once a devoted paladin or knight, we don't quite know for sure, Ingram was a dedicated soldier among the Brotherhood's ranks, highly skilled in the use and maintenance of power armor. That is until one fateful day when she lost both of her legs above the knee and suffered many other serious injuries as well. In a single day, she went from one of the most capable soldiers in the BOS ranks to a paraplegic and capable of ever leading troops in combat again. This would have been a death sentence for just about anyone else, no longer able to serve basically any role the Brotherhood of Steel had for her, and now being an invalid who only consumes resources, never collects them. It would have been easy to just give up and allow the Order to kick her out and let the wastes take her. But Ingram just didn't give up. She learned to pilot power armor even without her legs, and though she doesn't have the mobility to quite lead combat ops anymore, her expertise in power armor and the mobility afforded by her stripped down power armor frame allows her to serve as the Brotherhood's chief mechanic, responsible for the maintenance of the entire Brotherhood's power armor fleet. Ingram is fairly important to the Brotherhood storyline, working with either Dr. Lee or Dr. Skara to repair Liberty Prime. The Brotherhood's mission lies squarely on her shoulders, but we never really get to know Ingram on a personal level. We know she is a determined woman, intelligent, frustrated with her physical disability, but refusing to let it define her. But we never get to spend any time getting to know her, only her history. We know she has friends that enjoy spending time with her in their off hours, but we really only ever get to see the brave face she puts on when she's on duty. It would have been nice to build a personal friendship with her, even take her on as a companion. It's just a shame that these people who really have a chance to redeem the Brotherhood in the face of all of its widespread bigotry and zealotry are so underutilized. Okay, let me climb up on my high giddy-up buttercup here. The Brotherhood of Steel appears to be having a bit of an identity crisis because they just can't seem to get their ideology correct. I've already alluded to it, and it's a very long story, but an oversimplified version is the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel was founded under the leadership of Elder Owen Lyons, who raised and mentored Arthur Maxson. Maxson also had a crush on Lyons' daughter, which is a little creepy, but hey, it's not like they're related. Anyway, Lyons was a controversial leader among the BOS because he believed there was no point in executing the Brotherhood's primary mission of safeguarding dangerous technology in order to prevent a technology-fueled apocalypse from happening if there were no longer any people left to benefit from their mission. As a result, Lyons prioritized protecting the general public and even sponsored technological development projects as long as they served a purely constructive goal. This wasn't completely antithesis to the Brotherhood's mission, but it did prioritize secondary goals over the primary, leading to an eventual schism in the Brotherhood forming the Outcasts. After Lyons' death and a steady string of unfit leaders, including Lyons' daughter, Maxson was appointed elder, and he began to steer the Brotherhood back toward their original mission. However, he didn't ever ease off that course correction, to the point where now any technological development is viewed with disdain, and diverting troops to protect settlers is viewed as a waste of resources. The Institute's leadership and a large number of their divisions certainly are a threat to the Brotherhood of Steel's vision. The Synth Lab, the SRB, and a fair number of the projects in the Advanced Systems Department, as well as some defunct lab space still rocking around the back of the Biosciences Division, are definitely threats that the Brotherhood has good reason to fear and want to destroy. However, the agricultural research being conducted by the Bioscience Division, the energy research being conducted by Advanced Systems, the intelligence hosted by the SRB, hell, the synths themselves are valuable resources that the Brotherhood should want to safeguard, not destroy. The Pridwin, as impressive as it is, runs on fossil fuels. You know, that thing the world superpowers started a nuclear war over due to its scarcity. Wouldn't it be nice if, say, the Brotherhood now had access to a brand new nuclear reactor that might be able to, just as an example, power an armored airship? With SRB intel, the Brotherhood, now knowing the status of Institute surface operations, could plan their operations in a way that lets them either avoid Institute assets or wipe them out as necessary. With advanced research into food crops, crop rotation, soil pH levels, etc., the Brotherhood could actually help improve the everyday lives of the Commonwealth farmers, even bring that knowledge back to the settlers of the Capital Wasteland, or even still transmit it back to the West Coast chapters to distribute among the public there. The hardest sell would be the whole synth thing, but as I painstakingly described in my 5 myths about synths video, there is less practical advantage that the average Gen 3 synth has over the average human than there is between the least fit human and the most fit human. The idea of synths being a soulless automaton is based on Maxson's own ignorance and dogma rather than any provable data or information. Prove to me that humans even have a soul. Theologians, scientists, and philosophers have been arguing that since time immemorial. The irony here is that Maxson himself uses the phrase machine that thinks it's a person, a phrase that by the very nature of thinking, being aware of its own existence and attributing value to that existence is enough for history's greatest philosophers to label them as people. Once emancipated from the Institute's control, these people as individuals constitute no more threat to humanity than any true-blooded human. Once freed, synths should be able to enjoy at the very least the same disdainful tolerance from the Brotherhood that non-feral ghouls sometimes enjoy. Maxson's fixation on synths as the true enemy of humanity rather than the Institute that creates and wields them is a complete slap in the face to Brotherhood ideals. With all of this information in hand, it's pretty clear that the writers either had no idea who the Brotherhood is supposed to be, or they just lost sight of what guides the Brotherhood. I personally feel that making these changes would have constituted a major improvement for the faction as a whole, and could have gone a long way toward making the Brotherhood more multifaceted and less one-dimensional, but I'm curious what changes you would make to fix the Brotherhood of Steel as it is portrayed in Fallout 4. Would any of these changes cause you to switch allegiance and add Victorium to the fullest, or would it still be a lost cause in your eyes? Let us know in the comments below. I've said my piece and filled out my reports with Quinlan, so I'm out of here to grab some drinks with Dance and Ingram. Until next time, stay safe, and we hope to see you here later, right here at Gray Gaming.